If you guys are cool with it, my buddy James is gonna hang with me today because everything sounds better with keys underneath. Man, it's been so incredible to be in the midst of this series, 33 AD. Just every week, walking chapter by chapter and diving into the person of Jesus as we unpack the book of John. And I just have been moved every single week when you just have this reality, when you learn about who Jesus is, it just draws you closer and closer into his heart. And today we're gonna talk about John chapter 13. Well, one of the most beautiful moments in all the scriptures and this picture of what love looks like in its most purest form. But before we get to this passage that I love, I need to talk to you about another thing that I love, and that's basketball. And right, one dude is with me, I love it, right? Like it's March Madness right now. And it's college basketball, and it's the most insane 2 weeks ever in sports because you have all these big schools that have millions of dollars and thousands of students, and it seems like they should just win every year because they have the most resources. But the beauty of March Madness is that it's a tournament where if you lose, you're out, and these underdogs, these Cinderella stories rise up. And don't you love a good Cinderella story? And this tournament has been the craziest tournament maybe ever, where all the big schools are losing and all these tiny schools are winning, and Princeton made it to the final 16 teams. Like the nerds made it in basketball. And there's another school called Florida Atlantic that just made it to the Final Four. And it was like 2 years ago, they won 4 games the entire year. And now they're in the Final Four. And it's just this beautiful story in basketball where anything is possible. But my favorite story that's happening is this team, Kansas State. And give you a little backstory about Kansas State. It's a pretty small school, doesn't have much of a history. And their coach last year retired, kind of surprisingly, and so they were scrambling trying to figure out who they were gonna hire. And they hired a coach who was an assistant for 20 years in Texas. And this coach would talk about how he thought, I feel like I have what it takes to be a head coach, and he would interview and no one would hire him, and he would interview and they would say, we like you, but we're not gonna hire you. And for 20 plus years, he kept wondering, is my time ever gonna come? And he's a person of faith. He's a deeply connected follower of Jesus, and he has this moment where he's like, God, I feel like you've called me to this, but is the opportunity ever gonna come? And then this coach retires, and Kansas State reaches out, and it would not have probably been the job that he would have picked number one. But it was the only job that was available, and so he said yes, and the team had 15 players, and when he got hired, only 2 decided to come back. So he has 2 players on a team. I don't know if you played basketball, it's 5-on-5, not 2-on-5. And he just begins building a new team and new recruits, and transfers come over, and it's a brand new team. They have no chemistry, and they were picked to finish dead last. And then they have this player on their team who's Marcus Noel, and he's 5'8", which gives all of us short guys hope. And he's the star of the tournament, and he's from New York. And after they had this amazing game where they won in overtime, and they made it to the Elite 8, the best 8 teams in the country, they did an interview with the coach afterwards. And they said, how did you do it? This is such a Cinderella story. You came out of nowhere. How did you do this? And he said, 1, we have crazy faith in each other. And we have crazy faith that God has positioned us in such a way where we're just doing our part. And they're like, and the interview could tell, because okay, the God part, but let's move on, right? He said, but how did you bring the team together? What strategies did you have? And he said, I can't compete with the best coaches in the world with the best strategies, with the best nuances. Here's what I can tell you, is that when you love people, it's crazy what you can accomplish. And that quote just took off. Like the coach who loves people. Because when we see coaching, you got to scream and you got to demean, but And then yesterday they lost. Right on the brink of going to the Final Four, the epitome, they lost. And every other coach that lost, you see the anger in their face, and they're disappointed, or they blame the refs, or they say the other team that got lucky. This coach, Jerome Tang, when they lost, he went to the other team's locker room, and he talked to the team, and he said, "I'm so proud of you guys. You're the best team we played all year. You're the toughest guys. You inspired me by the way that you played. Go win a title." See, we think so often we need more resources, we need more intellect, we need more like revelation, and all those things are important. But I've been so inspired by Coach Tang because he's reminding us that there's a love that when we find it, it can not just change our situation, but it can change the world around us in ways that we've never seen before. And why this series is so beautiful, why I've loved diving into the book of John week by week by week, and we get to see the epitome of what love looks like in the person of Jesus. Because here's what I want you to leave with more than anything today, that if you'll open up your life to the possibility that God is who he said he is, that there can be a love that's waiting for you on the other side of your fears, on the other side of your struggles. It can be a love that can change everything. And in John chapter 13, this may be the most beautiful example outside of what Jesus did at the cross, but this was the moment that catapulted him to the cross. John chapter 13, verse 1 says this: "It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end." The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin, and he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Okay, I want to just take some time and just go through this passage together and just highlight some key moments that really stand out to me. And the first thing, and even in the wording, is so beautiful. It says that having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Here's what I want you to know, that Jesus has a love for you that has no end. That when you blow it, he still brings his love. When you rise up and you're at your best moment and the crescendo moments where you're just elevating in all that you do, that's also the same moment. His love has no end. And that as this passage begins, it's this invitation into a love from God that has no end. See, I've had moments in my life when I have felt the limit that people had for me in their love. How about you? So there's been time after time, moment after moment, and I've been the one who has only been able to give a certain amount of love to others. But what I love about the person of Jesus, that he promises us there is no cap to his love. There is no end to his love. There is no limit to his love. And it says that he loved them to the end. And then Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. See, this phrase right here is so key because it gives us an understanding and a posture of how Jesus interacted with the world when it came to power. It says that there was this moment of like revelation where Jesus fully understood that the Father had given him full power. And what does he do in the very same moment he realizes that all things are under his power? You know what he does? He wraps a towel around his waist and he chooses to serve. See, what do you do when you feel most powerful? What do you do when you feel elevated, when you feel you have the authority in the room, when you feel the magnetism of people who want to follow you? Do you hoard that power or do you use it to empower others? See, in this moment with Jesus, he's fully powerful. He's fully alive. And I can imagine his followers. This was the moment when Jesus knew that he was full of power. Okay, here's what we need to do. Now it's time to fight. Now it's time to take back what was ours. God, we're your chosen one. God, you're with us now. Now that you're full of power, now it's time to rise up. But when Jesus was full of power, that's not the moment he chose to rise up. It's actually the moment he chose to kneel down. And he said, I'm going to redefine power. I'm going to reshape character and humility. I want to give you a new picture of what it looks like to be full of power. I've been watching this show on Netflix about the Waco fiasco. It happened 30 years ago, and this cult leader named David Koresh, and it's been fascinating. One, I'm really fascinated with cult leaders. You know, if it's a documentary about a cult, I'm in. I hope that doesn't say anything bad about me. If it does, pray for me. I'm human. But I think it's so interesting with human psyche, and I always wonder, like, how do you fall for that, or why would you say yes to that? And this Waco fiasco, that rhymes too much, is this crazy moment where there's a standoff for 70 plus days, and it's really tragic, and way too many people die for no reason. But the moment I thought that was really interesting is there's all this footage of David Koresh talking about what they're gonna do and why they're gonna fight. And he said, I'm the Messiah. He thought that I'm the second coming. I'm God himself. And to show you that I'm God, to show you that I'm full of the divinity, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna fight back, because God told me that's what you do. You fight the government. You arm, right? They had enough weapons to start a militia. And he said, this is why, because we need to fight back with guns, with weapons, with violence. And see, that should have been the first key where they knew that this guy is not connected to Jesus. But this is what we think. We think that when you get more power, it means you need to use it to actually have other people submit to your will. That when you're full of power, you have to fight. See, when Jesus was full of power, he did not think that he had to fight an army. He did not decide that now we're going to go back and we're going to destroy the Roman Empire. He did not think that there was a physical fight that required his power, because his fight was for the human heart. See, he was trying to help us see that the sickness that was killing us was from the inside out. And so he said, no, when I'm full of power, I'm going to show you what true power looks like. It looks like servanthood. I'm going to wrap a towel around my waist. And I'm going to get down on my knees. And I'm going to wash my disciples' nasty feet. It's like I spoke last week, and it was about feet, and I was reading again. It was like, feet 2 weeks in a row, Jesus. And there's nothing beautiful about the physical nature of it. There's nothing divine about feet. It's nasty. But I think what God was trying to sear into our brains is that there should be no place that love will not take you. There should be no place that love has not changed you. And I want to be type of person that when God entrusts me with power, it does not cause me to elevate, but it causes me to actually serve. And I choose to find opportunities to serve. And not only does it say that he had all things under his power, and he wipes his disciples' feet with this towel. And then verse 6, it says, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And then Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. See, this moment right here, I think, is so essential to us understanding who God is in our life, for us understanding who God wants to be in our life. And Simon Peter has this natural reaction like, all right, Jesus, you're washing our feet. It feels wrong. I'm not comfortable with this. And then he says, are you really going to wash my feet? And then Jesus utters these words, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. I cannot tell you how many times in my life I have felt that same reality. God, I do not understand what you are doing. I cannot see what you see. And I'm filled with not just uncertainty. I'm not filled simply with doubt, but I'm filled with anger. Like, God, help me see it because I can't see through the clouds. Like, I remember being in this room, leading a Bible study and getting a frantic call from my wife saying, something's wrong with Rocky and we don't know what's wrong. And for the next week, just being so filled with fear, filled with so much anxiety, filled with so much doubt, going, God, I just want to understand what you're doing. And I think there's so many moments in our lives that we just want God to give us clarity. But he's like, I don't want to give you clarity. I want to give you an opportunity for trust. Because it's a muscle that you need to build. And I want to see, do you actually trust me? Do you believe in my character and my nature? And I think so many times in our life, we find ourselves at this intersection. Like, God, why did I lose my job? And I think God is telling us, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. Or, God, why did you let him break my heart like that? God, why did you let me be so vulnerable? You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. God, how come you answered her prayer but not mine? God, how come you showed up for them but not me? You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. See, I think God is trying to help us get to the place where we don't just find him in the now, but we also find him in the later. Where there's a trust that is built up inside of us. And when Jesus is washing the feet of Simon and the disciples, and they're confused, going, God, why are you doing this? You should be the last person. We should be washing your feet. And he's like, no. You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. I wonder, what's the later for you? What's the thing that God has been pressing in and around you, trying to help you realize that you may find freedom in it now, but it will forever change your future if you do not trust him, if you do not align your life with him. And I don't know what your later is. I know for me, with baby Rocky, see, I would have never wished that or dreamed it or scripted that. But I can tell you in the later, there's nurses at Children's Hospital of LA that we still have a relationship with because they fell in love with this girl named Rocky. There's doctors that do not believe in God, but they kept saying, why are so many people in this hospital room? Where are they from? You have all this family. And we're like, yes, it's our family. It's called our church. And they kept being blown away. People don't fill rooms in moments of despair. It's when they're most alone. But you have filled this room with people that love you and that are for you, because we did not realize now what God was doing later. Do you trust that God has a powerful later for you? That God has not abandoned you, that he sees you in your pain, he sees you in your struggle, he sees you in your worry. And just like that song says, pull me a little closer, maybe that moment of uncertainty isn't supposed to cause you to drift from God, but it's an opportunity for you to let him pull you in a little closer. And I love that next verse, in verse 8, when Jesus says, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand. And then Peter says, no. It's like, dang, Peter just told God no. And we're like, man, like, you really do need Jesus. He said, no. You shall never wash my feet. And then Jesus, always doing what he does, up in the ante, he said, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And this, she said, Jesus. See, this is really important. Unless I wash you, you have no part with me. See, this isn't a declaration from Jesus saying that you need to be perfect to be with me. This isn't him saying you can never blow it, you can never mess up. There's a mistake that is going to push you away from me and I need you to fix it. It's not what he's saying. What he's saying is I need you to realize that in order to have the intimacy with me that I long for, you have to be willing to let me get close. When I was thinking about Jesus saying, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And him on his knees, washing his disciples' feet. I was just thinking about how like awkward and uncomfortable that eye contact must have been. You know, like to be face to face with God, and then he's just scrubbing your toes. I'm like, all right, Jesus, could you go a little quicker? But I don't think he went. I think he took his time. I think he went really slow because I think he wanted them to appreciate the intimacy of the moment. See, one of my favorite things in the world that I get to do is bath time with my kids. It is a highlight of my day, and I get a little jealous if I'm doing the dishes and Beck's doing bath time. I'm like, dang, she gets to have that today. Because bath time is special and it's unique. And it's because it's all about proximity. It's all about intimacy. So when my kids are in the bath, I have to get down on a knee. And I've got to grab their arm and wash them. And we have this intimacy, this closeness. See, there's a difference between baths and showers. And our oldest, Isaiah, is like transitioning into showers, and I hate it. He's like getting independent. He's like, I want to do it myself. But I'm like, no, that's me and you, buddy. See, when Jesus says, unless I wash you, you will have no part with me, what he's saying is, I want to come up close with you. I want to see you face to face. See, God can heal you from a distance, but he can only change you face to face. See, the transformation that happens when we allow God into our story, when we allow him to come close enough to see all the little flaws and wounds and pain. It's the moment where God is saying, see, I don't simply want to wash you so that you can see how dirty you are. You can see how messed up you are. See, I want to be so close enough to you that you can realize that I want to give you a clean slate every single time. That I don't see you at your worst. In fact, I'm going to give you a new start so I can unleash all you at your best. And it's this intimacy that happens. It's this beauty where Jesus says, I want to be face to face with my child. He wants to wash you clean, and he wants to set you free. And then in verse 9, Simon Peter declares these words that I think all of us resonate with. Then, Lord, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. And Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you, for he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. I love that. Just a little side note. Like, even Jesus is like, my fit is not going to get wet. It's like some things matter. And the outer garment needs to be crisp. But he turned his clothes, he put on his clothes, returned to his place. He says, do you understand what I have done for you? See, that's a question you need to ask yourself. Do you understand what Jesus has done for you? I think sometimes we need to just pause and remember all that he has done for us. And then he says, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that is what I am. And now that I, your Lord and your teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. In verse 15, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. And for thousands of years, we've taken that literal. And there's been foot washing. Be glad that I did not have a foot washing ceremony for you today. But I don't think he meant that literally. I don't think he meant that you need to go around and physically wash people's feet. I think what he was trying to help us understand is that I'm giving you a visual that if me, who was full of power, if me, who was the one who should have been served, if I am willing to get on my knees and wrap a towel around my waist and wash my disciples' feet, what in the world is stopping you from living the life of a servant? See, God will never ask you and I to do something that he was not willing to do himself. To show us what true humility looks like. Because sometimes you need a marker. You need a visual. You need an example. You need a trend setter. You need someone to show you what love truly looks like. I recently met a new friend named Corey, who is just one of my favorite people on the planet right now. And he's just so kind. He's so full of joy. And I just am obsessed with him. Corey, if you're here, I'm obsessed with you. And I went and hung out with him, and he works for Caruso and the Grove and all their properties. And we were just hanging out at the Grove, and we just grabbed coffee, and we're just walking, and he's telling me all the stories about the Grove and what this means and the shifts that he made when he stepped into his role and the income that has been generated and that's been able for them to do more good and create a space called home for people. And I'm just getting the behind the scenes of what makes the Grove, right? Because there's church number one, but number two, right after church, is the Grove. And as we're talking and walking, and he goes and there's this little ticket stub, and he's telling me about Rick and how he started, and he just grabs that little ticket stub, puts it in his pocket, and he keeps chatting. And then we're walking more, and then we get on the elevator, and and somebody walked off the elevator and like a gummy wrapper fell out of her pocket, and he's talking, he picks it up, puts it in his pocket. And I just paused and I said, Rick taught you that, didn't he? He's like, what? What do you mean? Rick taught you that if there's a piece of trash, you don't call the janitors. If something dirty, you do it yourself and you pick it up, right? And he's like, yeah. It's the moment I got hired, that's what everybody understands, that if it starts with Rick, it channels all the way down to every employee. And he is an example, a living, breathing example of a title does not eliminate you from the process. See, when Jesus entered into the human story, when he put on flesh and blood, when he became one of us, when he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he got down and he washed his disciples' feet, what he was trying to remind us of is that I'm going to set the standard of what it means to be human. I'm going to be filled with power, but I'm going to show you that what true power looks like is humility. I want to be full of power and show you that what it truly looks like is servanthood. I want to be full of power and show you it's not about how high you can go, but how low you're willing to go. And I wonder for you today, what's the break that needs to happen inside of your psyche, inside of your mind, and inside of your heart, inside of your soul, where there's your most powerful self that is waiting to be unleashed. But maybe God's not ready to give you all the power he longs for until you're first willing to give him all the trust that he's been waiting for. And I wonder, maybe today could be a day unlike any other, where there's a love that God has for you that has no end, where when you need it the most and when you feel most broken and alone and you feel most filled with despair and you just feel like you want to give up, maybe it's in that moment when God says, I'm just waiting for you to invite me in a little bit closer. See, maybe today it's time for you to have the courage to kneel down and to meet Jesus face to face. I want us all to bow our heads and close our eyes. And we're going to just create a moment right now where we just allow God to speak to you in a way that is so fresh and so real and so honest. And maybe you're here and you have just been sucking air. You have tried to find a love or meaning or purpose, and you feel like you're just grasping at the wind and you can't grab a hold of anything. But maybe you're here and you're finally ready to just let God come closer. You're finally ready to meet him in the middle. You're finally ready to just make that turn, and instead of running away from him, you realize that he's been running towards you. And if you're here and you're just ready to finally trust Jesus with your life, no turning back, to cross over the line of faith, to give him your all, then I want you to pray this simple prayer right now and say, Jesus, I give you my life. Tell him right now. Say, Jesus, I give you my life. See, and when you utter those words, it's the moment when he washes you clean. It's the moment he takes all of your pain and your fears, all your brokenness, all your past, all the heaviness that you've been walking around with, and he says, give it to me and watch the life that I give back to you. Jesus, I give you my life. Okay, if you prayed that prayer right now and you said yes to him and you are ready to receive the love that he has for you, then I want you to raise your hand right now so I can pray for you. Beautiful. Keep your hand up. I want to see you. I want to pray with you. Beautiful. Come on. Beautiful. Anyone else? Beautiful. Jesus, I give you my life. Beautiful. Come on. It's never too late. Come on. Never too late. Beautiful. Come on. Father, I pray for every hand that's held high in this room. I pray right now, Jesus, you would wrap them in your love. You would hug them from the core of their being, and that they could know that there's beautiful, come on, there's a love that they've been waiting for, and it's found in you. Jesus, I pray that voices that are trying to steal this moment and remind them of their past, Jesus, I pray that they would turn the volume up on your voice and it would silence all the rest. Jesus, we thank you that this is a room filled with people who move from death to life, and I pray that they would walk out of here fully alive. We thank you, Jesus. We love you. We thank you that you were the greatest example of love that the world has ever seen. And our prayer is that you would ignite in us a love that the world desperately needs as we give it away freely. We thank you. We love you, Jesus. And we ask all this in your name. Amen and amen. Hey, Mosaic, right now, can we just celebrate everyone who said yes to Jesus? So beautiful. Man, before Ann comes up and gives us some last closing things, I just want to encourage you. We've got Easter that's coming up in 2 weeks. It's the highlight of our year. It's the best opportunity to fill this room with people who are trying to find life, trying to find a home. And I want to encourage you to just send those invites. Like yesterday, I was so excited. Even coming today, I was so excited because I got text and DMs and emails from friends saying, I'm bringing, my coworkers. I'm bringing my family who's never been to church. I got an email from someone said that it's my 40th birthday and I'm bringing 16 people to church today. They're going to be at the 12. And I love that. I'm like, I turned 40 this year. I'm like, dang, I should do that. And do a party at church, right? There's so many people that I think we have said no for that are simply waiting to be asked. See, if there is a love that has changed your life, if there is a place that has changed your life, if there is a moment that has forever changed you, do not keep it to yourself. Find the people that are desperately waiting to discover the same love that has no end that you and I have found. All right, love you, Mosaic.